So I have the privilege here today to be hosting Dave Wollman in the studio in our new, fitted out, expanded. Really can't tell so much that you can't see. Well, someday we're going to show everyone behind the scenes of what we did, other than just the walls. But Dave is the president of Laugo Arms USA. Mm-hmm. For those who don't know, Laugo Arms USA is the U.S. importer, distributor, marketing, and you do all the customer service and support.
Correct.
For the Alien pistol, mm-hmm. What's the other two? The Remus.
Yep. So they're technically all part of the Alien.
They're
family.
all part of that Alien.
Yep. So
family.
You have the original standard Alien, and then you have the Alien Creator, and then the Alien Remus, which is the carry model. So
okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So make sure that you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the buttons below. Make sure you click that little bell for notifications. That's going to give you notifications of all the new content as we bring it out. And this helps us to continue to grow the podcast and all the rest of the content that we've been putting out. So without further ado, welcome, Dave. Appreciate you coming in today.
Absolutely.
To the Accuracy Matters podcast. So we will get on with it. So we start off with most people. Just what was it like growing up shooting? Did you shoot when you were younger and so forth? And what was your first kind of introduction to shooting?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been a lifelong gun guy. When I was, I think, 7 or 8 years old, my dad bought the first pellet gun. And he built a shooting range in the basement. We had little Army guys and soda cans and everything. And he taught me how to shoot and gun safety and everything from a very young age. I think at 11 or 12, he bought my first .22. By that time, I had gotten into scouting. And so, the scouts have, rimfire .22 competitions and matches and merit badges and all that kind of stuff. So it was kind of ingrained in me from a very young age. It wasn't until later in life I got into the competition side of shooting.
Right.
But it was just something I really enjoyed doing. It was a bonding activity for my dad and I, and something that we did a lot of. I was fortunate enough growing up. We had a family property up in northern Pennsylvania.
Oh, nice.
So when I was up there for the weekend, I would sneak off into the woods with the .22 and set up, shotgun shells on branches and, create my own little dynamic shooting range that I could, walk through the woods and have targets from anywhere from, 10 yards to 30 yards. And, just kind of came up that way. So spent a lot of time, behind guns growing up, and, got into pistols as I was a little bit older. Got into some of the longer stuff, shotgun, sporting clays, things like that. So
right,
a little bit of everything.
You like to mix with everything. So
yeah,
that's always the thing I talk to everybody about. Is like, there's so many people that are just one discipline. Mm-hmm. Like, people don't realize that they're not part of the gun community, but there's a lot of people that are very specific to, oh, I shoot rifle. Oh, I shoot semi-auto rifle. Oh, I shoot pistol, shotgun. Right, there's guys that are just trap guys. Even within shotgun, there's people that are just trap guys. That's all they shoot,
and they're the scary ones, right? Beware the man with one gun.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, they're the ones you don't want to shoot against in a one gun competition.
100%.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was I just enjoyed being around firearms. So getting into all of it for me was an enjoyable activity, but also being able to progress through all of them. If you only shoot one gun, at some point, it's likely that you're going to plateau. Right, you're gonna get probably as good as you're anatomically ever gonna get on that firearm. Whereas if you have that cross section of shooting a little bit of everything, if you start getting bored of shooting pistol every time you're at the range, you can switch over to rifle, switch over to shotgun.
Yep.
If you're doing carbine work, you can switch over to the long range bolt gun stuff. So it's nice to just kind of be able to, change it up once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had a conversation with somebody that's a longtime friend of mine that's a PRS shooter. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a little burnt, going through some burnout of shooting precision rifle series, right? And we talked about, he's like, maybe I get into some semi-auto stuff and start doing some of those competitions. That's a little bit different. Yep. Getting into some of the gas gun series, just because it kind of just drags you down at some point. Not that it's not fun. You don't enjoy it. You definitely enjoy everybody that's there.
It can become a chore after a while, though, if you're shooting the same matches every single weekend.
Yep. Yeah. And if you really, what did he tell me? His last season, he shot 22-day matches and like 10 one-day matches. I'm like, that's 30 weeks. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's like you're shooting every weekend. And then you're loading and doing all your load development and training and everything else.
Yeah, and if you're serious about it, you're training during the week. So that's a lot of commitment to make.
You can definitely say you can get burned out. So yeah, I definitely would agree that it's nice when you can start to, branch out. And I've just started doing more with pistol now, because I think it's
start to diversify a little bit.
Just have some fun and do different things. So it does make it more fun. So, you did hunting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was a late bloomer when it came
late bloomer for hunting.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I never had anything against it. Just I grew up in the suburbs, so it wasn't while my dad shot his whole life. He was on the high school, rifle team. My dad was not a hunter. He'd gone on a few bird hunts. He'd been hunting once or twice, but it wasn't a lifestyle for him. And so it wasn't until I was in my probably late teens, early 20s, my cousin, who was, lifelong hunter, grew up out in the rural part of Pennsylvania. He and I grew up. He was the closest thing I had to a brother growing up. And so he kind of really started putting the screws to me. He said, man, you shoot all the time. You need to start going hunting.
Yeah.
And, as I got older, I started to have an appreciation for that, being able to harvest your own meat. And it's, it's the cleanest, leanest meat you're going to get on the market.
Sure.
So, as I started to get an appreciation for that, he kind of took me under his wing, mentored me and got me into hunting. I will not go as far as to call myself a hunter yet. I think that's unfair to hunters. But I make a habit every year to go out for, archery and rifle season for deer here in PA. Go bird hunting every once in a while. But again, something I really enjoy. I spend most of my time at matches, or if I'm behind a gun, I'm at the range, so I don't have as much time to get there and hunt, especially with work. But it's a very cathartic experience. As they say, it's called hunting, not killing, for a reason. So you've got to love being outdoors. And for me, I'm an outdoor guy. Over everything else. So even if I don't see a single animal all day, if I'm sitting in a stand or sitting in a blind,
you're good just sitting and hanging and just enjoying yourself and being outside.
Exactly right. Yeah.
That's awesome. I know Braxton, when I think it was this last season, he was out and he took his wife out with him, and he's like, bundle up, because they're up in upstate, like New York, or Binghamton, New York.
Yeah, I guess chill out there. That's only about 15 minutes from where my property is, up by the border there. So I know Binghamton well, yeah.
So it's cold.
Yep.
Right? And he tells her, I'm probably going to yell at for this, but tells her, put on 2 pairs of socks, do this. And she said, no, I'm fine. I'll be good. And then she's like 15 minutes in, like, can we go? It's cold. And he's like, we've been here 15 minutes. Like, we got, like, it's going to be a little bit longer.
We've seen everything we're going to see. It's time to go inside now. Yeah. Yeah. It's a patience-based activity for sure.
You gotta love it. But I mean, I talked to a number of guys. I mean, that's like their cathartic way of just kind of being out and being kind of just de-stressing and, enjoying being outside and everything.
And it is. I mean, it forces you into a place where there's nothing else to do. There's no distractions, right? You can't be sitting there on your phone the whole time. You're not answering emails. You're not responding to text messages. It's just you and nature, and hopefully some wildlife if you're lucky. If you did your planning right, if you did your scouting right. But yeah, it is. It's just a very cathartic experience. It's therapeutic. Yeah.
That's awesome. I normally do bird hunting more than anything.
A little faster pace, a little more action there.
Yeah, and it's fun with the, we take the family out, and my nephew and so forth, and we've taken out, and it's this last year we didn't get the chance to go out, but it was so darn cold, man. I always say, like, I'm a fair weather shooter, but when it gets down to like 8 degrees, I don't know that I want to be out tretching around for 2 hours.
It takes a toll on you. It definitely it removes some of the fun factor.
Yes.
Unless you're a glutton for punishment, in which case sometimes you enjoy just putting yourself in the sucker a little bit and enduring it. But yeah, 32 degrees,
40 degrees, and the sun's out. Mm-hmm. Sign me up, man. I'm there, right?
Yeah,
but 8 degrees like it was this last season,
with 30-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah, that's not my cup of tea anymore. So.
Yeah, I hear that.
So what attracted you to the I mean, obviously you like the competitive. You were basically almost shooting competitions by yourself. You're setting up your own matches.
Yeah.
So what do you think that draw to do that? Or what do you like about that?
So I kind of fell into competition shooting almost by accident. I guess probably it's going back 2015, 2016 timeframe. Been doing a lot of, again, kind of my own shooting on the move kind of stuff, action shooting without even realizing it. I had the property and space to play. And so I was just going to play and train and get better and become more proficient. And so, around that time is when multi-gun was getting popular. 3-gun was kind of at its heyday around that point. And so I was actually over at a local FFL picking up, I forgot, a shotgun or something along those lines. And one of my buddies was with me, and we got to talking to this FFL who was a member at one of the local clubs. And he said, hey, if you guys are into, shooting, come on out this Saturday. We're hosting a multi-gun event. This is over at Langhorne Rod and Gun Club over here in Holland, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And ironically, I had no idea that the club had even been there right in my backyard this whole time.
The whole time.
Not only was the club right there, but also they've been hosting these matches and events and all kinds of stuff that were open to the public. Yeah. And so that was basically just jumped in with both feet and showed up at this club match. And, one of the best things about competitive shooting, if you haven't been a part of it, is the community.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, almost without exception, everybody is just so welcoming. And so, we rocked up to this first match with a pump, it was a multi-gun match, so with a pump shotgun, an 870, and an old cobbled together, AR-15, Franken build. And, I forget, just a Walther or whatever it was I was shooting at the time. But, it was basically a shoot what you brought. And what was great about it was, everybody said, "Oh, awesome, we got new meat here." And so it was, hey, take this piece of equipment, or try my shell caddies, or try my rifle sling, or try this method when you're getting into positional shooting. And so it was a very welcoming community, which is awesome. But that hook got sunk deep right on that first match. And so we shot that first multi-gun match, shot every monthly match after that for the rest of the year, and then immediately said, okay, how can we get more? We need more. And so at the time, that's when 3GN, 3-Gun Nation was big. So immediately started shooting the 3GN matches. That then morphed into some of the UML matches. Kind of shooting club level matches in southeastern Pennsylvania here, but then very quickly realizing, man, there's matches all over the place.
All over, yeah.
So we can drive down to the Carolinas, we can fly out west for this stuff. So really went down the rabbit hole fast. Even got into USPSA. Realized that my pistol shooting was not up to snuff where I wanted it for multi-gun. So got into the USPSA world to start kind of brushing up on the pistol skills, which has a lot of direct translation over to multi-gun and vice versa. So I again jumped in with both feet and became addicted almost immediately.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, mine was always what initially got me is I shot rifle, but you always shot paper.
Mm-hmm.
When I first rang steel at 1,000 yards, dude, I was like, hook, sign me up.
There's your addiction,
right?
When you have that audible feedback, and it's not just putting holes in paper and going, yeah, I think I hit somewhere accurately, but you know that you connected with something far away. And I think there's something, I don't know if it's hardwired into some guys' brains, but I call it a projectile enthusiast. Whether it's archery, whether it's rifle shooting, pistol shooting, whatever it is. If there's something about reaching out and having an effect on something far away that requires accuracy, and you need to kind of man and machine have to be working in concert to make it happen. There's something very gratifying about that. Yeah.
It's for anybody that's out there that's listening that hasn't done it, and you really want to get on distance. And shooting steel. I mean, I will say sporting clays was something I did before that, which was a big addiction. I mean, I loved shooting sporting clays.
Same thing. You've got that visual feedback of the clay exploding in midair. Yeah.
And when you've done it, when you hit it, right? Yeah. And it just, it's that instant smile and gratification. Yeah. Actually, in the first time I shot a 410 at clays was the other thing that made me just light up. Like the fact you take this little tiny shell and you hit this clay and you're like, that's just, and it has like no recoil.
No, and you're sitting,
it just dusts, and you're like, that's just amazing.
This is fun. Let's do more of this. Right? Yeah, exactly. And to answer your question kind of a little bit more thoroughly, for me, very quickly the attraction became, competition shooting was that next level of progression.
Right.
If all you're doing is shooting in the woods by yourself, and you're not surrounding yourself with better shooters, you're not spending the time or investing the money or time really in taking classes or shooting with guys who are better than you and seeing what that next level of performance and accuracy and speed is, you're going to plateau without knowing it, right? And so for me, it was being exposed to the competition shooting world and realizing like, all right, this is really cool. I can hold my own because I've spent time doing this, but man, I can't do what he's doing. And then you go over and you talk to him, and again, because it's such a welcoming community, it's not really cutthroat. I mean, even at the higher levels, most guys are very open with, especially with a newer shooter, sharing their stage plan, sharing where they might be reloading somewhere, sharing techniques and equipment and everything else. And so it was just a really fun way to start being able to continue pushing that progression and being able to really push the envelope of what your personal limitations are. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think that's, I mean, before I started doing competition shooting, you read about that, you hear about like, oh, it's such a welcome community. People shared. You don't show up with nothing, and people will literally gear you up before a match. Like you could literally just show up, and people will just, hey, I got this extra pistol, I got this.
Yeah, no, shoot mine. No, shoot mine. Yeah, right, exactly. It becomes a competition in and of itself. Who gets to give the guy the most gear?
Yeah, it is that type of community that you get a part of, and man, it's because and then. We've talked about this with some of the other people on the podcast. A lot of my friends that you build lifelong friends, like shooting these competitions. I mean, these are guys 100%. that because you just have so much in common with, and just start clicking on everything. And it's just, just the best to go. That's why, like last year, I didn't get to go shoot any matches because of how busy we've been. I'm sure you have the same.
I know
right?
know the pain all too well. Yeah.
Right. And I went to a match. Literally, I didn't even care. I hadn't gotten a chance to practice. I'm like, look, I just want to go to just see all my buddies and just hang out just for the day. I don't really care about the shooting piece as much. I want to go be part of the group.
That's what it is. It's as much a social event as, and it's the same thing. Most of the guys there are standing around smoking a cigar, especially if it's a little bit more relaxed club match. And it's just a great excuse to get outside and, hang out with the boys,
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned it, and I'm a perfect example. I met who's currently now my best friend and became best man at my wedding. We met at one of those early multi-gun club matches and have been thick as thieves ever since. So
it happens. I mean, that's you get out there, and most of my friends today are guys that I shoot with, and we all just kind of click all together. And
it's like anything else. When you have an activity or a sport that is based that much at its core around enthusiasm and passion, you wind up running into a lot of like-minded individuals. And political aspect aside, most of the time, if you're into guns, you're probably a gear guy. You're probably going to be into watches or cars or cigars or good whiskeys. So there's usually a lot of overlap in hobbies and passions and things 100%. That people can very quickly bond over. So
100%. Yeah, everything that. It's the lifestyle, right? It's almost like there's this lifestyle that goes along, and there's a lot of those overlapping, all those things that you just mentioned. That we all kind of love, and you don't have to love every one of them, but you maybe get introduced to something like cigars or whiskey or something like that, or bourbon.
If you didn't have enough vices before, go try competition shooting. You'll leave with some. Yeah, absolutely.
So when you started, did you do any sort of instructor training courses to get involved into it, or how did you kind of get in?
Yeah, a little bit. So, again, I'll call it fortunate enough, kind of happenstance of, as I started shooting more matches, I was able to just get into squads and shoot with guys who were way better than me. And so I got to spend a lot of time watching those guys. And even though it may not have been direct instruction per se, you can't help but absorb some of that. But I did. I ended up taking some classes from Fieldcraft Survival and a couple other guys like that. Which again, it's a great way. You talk about being multidisciplinary. And if all you do is competition shooting, you're going to become somewhat myopic in that, right? And so for me, because my background, I'm not a military guy, but my background was more of a kind of dynamic shooting style, tactical shooting style, whatever buzzword you want to throw on it. That's what I kind of grew up just learning and teaching myself how to shoot by default. And so, taking some of those courses to make sure you don't become, I call it competitionally complacent. If all you do is run as fast as you can and shoot at big pieces of paper, right? Your accuracy is going to suffer. Your split second thinking is going to suffer because all you're doing is executing a stage plan. Right. And so for me, most of the courses that I take are more kind of self-defense oriented, tactical oriented, that kind of stuff, because I like to kind of force myself back into a different mindset of, okay, let's not start developing bad habits that work great on a one-way range when all you're doing is shooting at paper. Let's face it, especially if you're into the Second Amendment, if you carry every day, you have a level of accountability and responsibility to yourself, your family, your community, to make sure that you are an asset and not a liability. And so for me, that's exactly to keep that proficiency and to make sure that, you're not going to, get into a situation and think you just heard a timer beep. Right. there's a big difference between competition shooting and self-defense shooting and those kind of things. So I always encourage anybody, if you're going to get into one kind of shooting really heavily, branch out. Make sure you don't become myopic in that. Yeah.
One of my best stories is when I was in my previous life at the security company, dealt with a lot of police and so forth that were RSOs for schools and so forth. And one of them had told me the story of the way that they had trained the police was anytime they had a malfunction, they weren't allowed to actually fix the malfunction, right? So they were literally told to put their gun down, put their hand up. That's how they taught them.
That's a method.
Probably not the best, because what happened was they got into a situation where they were shooting, and guess what he did? He had a malfunction.
Yeah.
Put the gun down and put his hand up because that was the muscle memory that they had taught him.
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's dangerous.
Yeah. If you need to train, being diversive, try to get into the different situations, because if you train just one particular way, that's all you're going to know.
Yeah. I mean, it's like cars. If all you've ever done is drive on the track and you've never driven on the street, you're probably going to be a pretty shitty driver.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. If all you've ever done is drive on the street your entire life, doesn't mean you're going to be a good driver on the track.
Right.
And again, so being able to kind of branch out and, and listen, you can make the argument that maybe that makes you a jack of all trades and a master of none. That's fair. I'm not going to fight that, but, it's that kind of the mindset that I've subscribed to, and it's served me well so far. There's more to that.
There's more to that saying. We should put that up on the screen and say the whole entire saying.
Yeah, because the second half of that is just as important, and it kind of flips the script on the whole argument. Yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
It's always a funny thing when you hear that, and then you think about it, and then if for the people that know, there's another part to the side to that gets left off most of the time.
Yeah, as a jack of all trades is still better than a master of none. Yeah, right. Exactly.
So you have some background in some different industries. What I want to bring up is just off topic a little bit is the watches, because we've had some connection, right?
Absolutely.
We know a lot of similar people because of the watch thing. And I found that goes back to where you said originally, it's because what really drew me into all of this was really precision.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily so much. I mean, I love guns. I love shooting. I love the sport. I love all that. But what I really, really kind of get into the nitty gritty for is that precision, that ultimate precision, whether it's shooting a small group at a really long distance away or hitting something that's like that, or the actual precision of machining the firearm. And then you look at watches, and I look at that and I'm just amazed at the precision that goes into watches in general.
No, and you're 100% right. And I think there is a lot of crossover in that. And, I think it kind of goes back to, I think I made a comment earlier about, a lot of gun guys are gear guys.
Oh, and I can't even tell you how many are engineers. Like half the guys I shoot with are engineers.
And I think you get a lot of appreciation for that. Listen, there's plenty of gun guys out there who don't care, right? They just go buy whatever gun their buddy tells them to. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, there's a lot of people out there, I think both of us can agree, are kind of like-minded in that sense, is that you just have an appreciation for what mankind has become capable of manufacturing. And it's cool because that's a constantly moving criteria, right? With every passing decade, we get better and new manufacturing processes come online. And now with the advent of additive manufacturing and where that's gone,
huge.
And I mean, it's turned the suppressor industry on its head.
Oh yeah.
But just you're absolutely right. There's something about that precision engineering, but not just engineering, the ability to then actually craft that with your hands. Whether it's, Swiss watches, whether it's firearms manufacturing. Yes, most of the firearms world revolves around CNC machining. But most good firearms, there's still a significant level of hand fitting and, manual labor that goes into taking it from this is just a pile of parts that are going together like Legos to this is now a fine-tuned machine, not only capable of containing explosions in your hand, but sending a projectile extremely accurately and working in concert and being reliable in all different kinds of environments. And there's definitely an aspect of that if you have that appreciation for one, it's going to cross over into a lot of other things. And same thing with cars, right? High performance cars, that those only exist because of what we're capable of when it comes to engineering and machining and innovation and just performance and constantly pushing that envelope.
It's all, and that's why I say there's that related kind of mentality that kind of links everything together on all those
and underpinning fronts. In every one of those hobbies and passions and industries. Yeah, you're exactly right.
And that's why you find so many of those guys have those other interests. Because that's kind of just all part of that whole mindset that goes along with it all. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And you mentioned having that background in watches. I took a kind of circuitous route into the firearms industry. Spent a little bit of time in the watch industry, and it's funny. I realized one morning I woke up and I said, "Man, I love watches, but I'm not a watch industry guy." And that was where I kind of realized, all right, I want to get into an industry where the product is something that I can sink my teeth into, but also the community and the industry is something that I can kind of embed into and become a contributing factor to. And that's kind of how I eventually wound up in the firearms industry. So.
Yeah, I would say like horology is not like there's the people that like Braxton's actually, and Braxton loves that. Like that's what he literally watches videos on that kind of stuff, like on watches, like on like, because again, it just comes down to the precision and the manufacturing.
It's hard not to appreciate it. Yeah,
you just geek out on all that stuff and ultimately just love anything that goes along with those.
Anything mechanical. Yeah,
it's great. So then you move into the firearms industry. So what was that transition, or was it?
Yeah, so this was been a little over a decade now. It's hard to believe, but I originally started working for a company called Lancer Systems. I'm sure you're familiar with their rifles and magazines. They make some awesome products. They're just up here in Quakertown, Pennsylvania. Yep. Got a job working for them in their marketing department, and that kind of was the catalyst that kind of was a jumping off point for the rest of what I've done in the last few years. And so I'll kind of dive into that. But while I was at Lancer, one of the projects that I got involved with was bringing the Alien to the US. So Lancer, the sales manager at the time, had a relationship over with the Czech Republic, and his wife was actually Czech. Okay. And so as the Alien was coming out and gaining in popularity over the European competition circuit, word of the gun started getting over to the U.S., but the gun wasn't in the U.S. yet; it wasn't being imported. And so Lancer, the team at Lancer, kind of had the forethought to say, let's get behind this and let's figure out a way to bring this thing into the country. And that project kind of got put on my desk as the marketing manager at the time. They said, okay, we got to figure out how are we, we're a rifle company, how are we going to bring this pistol to market to the U.S. And so we ended up, bringing it in, launched it at SHOT Show that first year. Okay. Ended up winning Best of Show. The Alien pistol did one recoil Best of SHOT Show for that year. Okay. It was very, very quickly kind of adopted, and everybody, in the beginning, it was kind of this vaporware because it wasn't in the US yet. And people were like, what is this thing? It's so technologically different. The operating system's completely different. And so when it came into the US, a lot of people who had been following it internationally very quickly kind of got in the fold with it. And so it gained a lot of traction very quickly. And so when I left Lancer, I'd gotten the entrepreneurial bug at that point. Right. Ended up standing up a company called 9x19. At the time, this was like the year right before COVID. Okay. Right as kind of the firearms market was starting to explode. So I mean, I can't take personal credit, but I can take timing credit for that kind of took off in that first year during COVID. But that business focused really primarily on pistol upgrades. So aftermarket barrels, triggers, parts kits, slides for Glock and SIG platforms primarily. And that was where I kind of cut my teeth on the business side of the firearms industry, working with sales and distribution and wholesalers and dealers and all that kind of stuff. And then that kind of, again, very kind of who and being in the right place at the right time through working at 9x19, met ultimately the guys that would become my partners in the next project, which was originally Oracle Arms, then became OA Defense. And as we were in the process of standing up OA Defense, the guys from Laugo actually came and found me at SHOT Show, and the contract with Lancer was expiring for the import and distribution. And they wanted to stand up their own kind of factory affiliated entity here in the US. So think CZ USA and Walther and Glock. Mm-hmm. They all have their own US based entities now. And so, Laugo wanted to do the same thing. And because of my involvement with Lancer at the time, kind of bringing us into the country, they knew that I had the knowledge base for the pistol, liked what I had done with it at Lancer. And so they said, will you kind of help us stand up this US based entity? And it just worked out really well that we were standing up OA Defense at the same time. We kind of partnered the two together. OA Defense provided the infrastructural support to build the business. And, we kind of transitioned everything over, and now Laugo Arms USA is its own, so it's completely own separate business. But Laugo Arms USA is now the exclusive importer and distributor and service provider for the whole Alien platform and the whole pistol line here in the US.
Is there any crossover between OA Defense and
Yeah, so we kind of call them sister organizations. Okay. So we share operational resources, which is a fancy way of saying a lot of our employees wear different hats. Right? Our shipping team ships from the warehouse for both sides. Our sales teams are independent. So our dealer sales and everything, because they focus on one. But we do a lot of our events together. At SHOT Show in the last few years, our booth has basically been split right down the middle. We're Laugo on one side, OA Defense on the other. But as both companies continue to grow, we'll see if that changes and we start kind of branching out. But it's been a really good kind of synergistic relationship, and each brand has kind of helped each other leapfrog. As OA Defense was brand new, it was able to piggyback off of Laugo being an established brand, and as Laugo has been more established and OA picks up, as we go and do all these different demos together and everything, it's great because the OA Defense side makes a phenomenal duty pistol. Laugo makes the best competition pistol on the market. And so even though they're both handguns, there's no real direct competition there. They kind of complement each other. And so, when we would go to demo events and industry events, we'd kind of share tent space and everything. And it was kind of a good complementary relationship there. So.
Yeah, I can see. Obviously they share, they're both pistols, so, mm-hmm. but they're different enough that they're not, like, it's not a
different applications, different customer bases. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
So you did SHOT Show, mm-hmm. and you did the how was the range day? I'm curious, like, because you had both there.
We did, yeah. This year was hands down the best industry day at the range that we've had in years. I mean, if you've been going out to SHOT Show for long enough, especially if you talk to any exhibitors who've been part of range day the last, gosh, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, it's been either 30 degrees, raining, 40-mile-an-hour winds, or all three in the middle of the Nevada desert for range day. So it's just been a suck fest. This year, however, it was 65 degrees and sunny all day.
Yeah.
And so, not only was it great at being an exhibitor or vendor there, but the turnout was, I would say, at least 50 to 60% higher than what we've gotten in past years, because everybody who was out there for SHOT Show who had access to range day was out there. So I think we ended up putting about 9 or 10,000 rounds through the guns in a 8-hour period.
Wow.
So it was great for us, and it's fun, especially with the Alien. It's such a different pistol. And listen, a lot of people will make that claim, but if you look at the Alien, you recognize there is something different going on here. The whole thing is upside down. The barrel's on the bottom. The operating system's on the top. The optics don't move. There's a lot of things about it that are just very different from shooting any other pistol. And so events like that are great because you get to put people on the gun who they might have seen it in a YouTube video or read a magazine article about it, or they've seen it in a dealer display case, but they've never been able to get hands-on with it. And it really is a product where to pull the trigger on it for the first time is to understand it. Mm-hmm. It's a different recoil impulse. It's a different cycle. So being out at industry events like that are a great opportunity for people to really understand and experience what it's all about. And so the whole day just becomes a rinse and repeat of people just putting a few rounds through it and turning around and holding their hand and going, what did I just shoot?
Right.
And either giggling or just standing there in awe going, I've never shot anything like this.
Yeah.
So for us, that's one of the best ways for us to get out there and market these pistols or at events like that, like Industry Day at the range. Yeah.
And is that mainly dealers that you're talking with there? Is it law enforcement? Like, what's the
a little bit of both. So the way they structure Industry Day at the range is the morning is all I don't think which way it is. The morning is all media. So it's all industry media. You have to be affiliated and credentialed with, either a YouTube channel that's got a decent amount of subscribers or a media or industry publication rather. And they vet it pretty closely because they don't want everybody just showing up and burning through the manufacturer's ammo. But so the morning from call it 8 to 12 is all media. Okay. And then in the afternoon they open it up to all the retail buyers. And so you'll get some military buyers out there as well, but really it's the industry buyers, gun shops, distributors, retailers coming out and getting hands on with the products that they want to either bring in or start putting more of their weight behind throughout the course of that year.
And do you find like that's a good way for dealers to get their hands on the gun for the first time and to really
one of the best? Yeah, I mean
because it's so different. It's like, look, it's like anything. If you can see it, okay, it looks cool, great, that's great. But it's so different. Mm-hmm. If you don't shoot it, we tell people about that on our rifles too. That it's like, look, it looks like a semi-auto rifle.
Right.
You got a lot more. If you don't shoot it, then I can't. It's hard for me to give you what makes all the difference. I can tell you all the differences, but it's different when you actually get your hands.
You're exactly right. Yeah, there's a big difference between a sales rep standing in front of you at in a gun shop, just regurgitating the selling points, right? The fun thing with this pistol is when you put it in somebody's hands, they realize you're not full of shit. There really is something different to this. There's a performance. The performance benefit that you get from the mechanical advantages of the system. And so to your point, it's a great way for dealers to get hands-on with it. We end up picking up, I would say probably at least a dozen or so dealers every year when we do this. Mm-hmm. And as the brand becomes more prolific and well-known, more and more dealers will show up. In the beginning, it was, hey, we're Laugo Arms and we make the Alien. You may or may not have heard of it. Let me tell you a little bit about what it is. Now people are seeking us out. They're coming to the booth going, man, I've heard about this thing. I really want to put some rounds through it. Or I've got a customer who has one of these who keeps telling me I need to shoot these or bring the line in. And so, going to events like that, whether it's, SHOT Show Industry Day at the range or TriggerCon or NRA or any of these bigger industry events that have range days attached to them, mm-hmm. it's the bread and butter for us to be able to get people, into the family of dealers. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you sell direct or just through dealers?
A little bit of both. So we do have a web store. We have an e-commerce platform. Okay. And really that just exists primarily for our parts and accessories. You can purchase firearms on the website and have them shipped to your FFL. Mm-hmm. We really try to encourage people to go to their authorized dealers though, especially if they got one in stock, because again, if you have stocking dealers, your customer can go and get hands-on with something. But we make the web store available. There's some people who just prefer to buy, direct. But we never run any sales. It's an interesting dynamic to try to manage because we never want to be in competition with our dealers.
Right.
And so we really do push. We got a big dealer locator and a map, so we try to drive as much traffic as we can to the dealers. But the nice thing about having that e-commerce platform is that our dealers don't have to stock as deep of an inventory, especially of all the parts and accessories and components. The interesting thing with the Alien is they really are kind of an ecosystem. There's all different kinds of top rails and optic mounting solutions and mag wells and grip panels and all this kind of stuff that if you're a gun shop, you don't necessarily need to dedicate your very valuable retail space and shelf space to all of these different parts and components.
Right.
Sell your customer the pistol, and then they can go grab all the little ancillary stuff from the website as they need it.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of a nice symbiotic setup there. We've had a pretty good success rate with that.
Yeah, we've set up the 360 Precision the same way, in that I don't want to be in competition with. It was always a problem, like in my previous with the security business. That's not always the case,
right?
Where you would have, a manufacturer that basically you would spend time as a dealer or a VAR or whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
right, back in that industry, and we would help build that brand in this area, or I would make presentations to various customers, and then they would come back and they'd be like, okay, that's great, and then they would go directly to the manufacturer, and say, hey, we'd like to get a quote on whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, they wouldn't be coming in and talking to you if it wasn't for me,
right?
Your dealer. So I always want to support the dealer network because they're reaching out and touching the directly with the customer, having that direct interface with the customer.
And that's exactly right. And then, the thing that we always tell our dealers too is if you're a gun shop, for the most part, you've got your customer base, right? Like your local guys, it doesn't matter what is out there in the market, they're going to buy through you 9 times out of 10, especially if you're a good shop with a good customer rapport. Most of these guys are coming in just because they want to talk to their buddies who work behind the counter, right? And so if they're a dealer, if they sell the line, even if they don't have something in stock, chances are your customer's going to order through you. But if we have somebody reach out to us and say, hey, I'm considering this purchase, or I'm looking at these 2 models, can you help me decide between the 2? We will never say, yes, you want this model and here's the link to go buy it. We will always start with, hey, yeah, this is the model you're going to want. It looks like you've got a dealer about 20 minutes from you.
Mm-hmm.
Go talk with them. They might have one in stock. Even if they don't, they can order one from us and we'll ship it out to the dealer, and that dealer then makes that sale. And maybe they get a new customer for life out of that. Maybe it's one of their customers they've already had. But yeah, we will always try to push the sales back to the dealer. Now, in some cases, listen, a guy might live in the middle of Nebraska, for example, and his closest dealer is 200 miles away.
Right.
And that's why we kind of exist the way we do, because we don't want to gatekeep the product line too much.
Sure.
We want to make sure that it's accessible to anybody in the country, but we still put a really high priority on pushing as much business as we can to our dealers, because they're our lifeblood. Yeah.
Now, I don't know. I believe it. Do you guys do limited drops sometimes?
We do. Yeah. We try to do a few a year. We've got our core product line, which we kind of call our production variants.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do both special editions and limited editions. And there's the important distinction there. Our special editions they're not limited to a specific number. So they're not going to be serialized like 1 of 50 or 1 of 100. But they're going to be produced in smaller batches. They might not get made every year. We import them in much smaller quantities because the factory might only run 25, every 6 months, or 50 in a year, whatever it might be. Versus our limited editions, which are going to be, serialized 1 of 500 or 1 of 100. And if in those situations, those models will never be made again. So, we're very careful. There might be something similar, but we'll never make that exact model again. Because for us, if you're going to invest the money in a limited edition, you don't want it to just exist again on the market a year later.
Right. Yeah.
So that's something that we put a lot of attention behind. And so, yeah, we do that from time to time. We've got a couple of new ones out for this year that we launched at SHOT Show. The one that's sitting in the middle here was actually one of our, it was the introductory limited edition of the Remus model for the US, or our USA 500 edition. And then we have the new Gemini kit, which is actually 2 of the Remuses in a matched kind of akimbo set, because we launched the left-handed Remus this year. So that pistol is completely left-handed, left side ejection. We wanted to take care of the left-handed shooters out there. So by doing that allowed us to create this really cool kind of twins set of the left hand and right hand gun, and they're all matching serial numbers. So it's 1 of 50 left, 1 of 50 right, 2 of 50 left, 2 of 50 right. So it comes in a really, really cool custom collector's case you can mount on the wall, and so that's a really cool one. Yeah, we did 50 of those for the whole world, 25 for the US market. Yeah,
that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's always the limited edition. I mean, there's always the guys that are out there that love collecting stuff, and I'm not a collector of antique type gun. Like I can have all the
It's a whole
appreciation in the
different world.
world,
It's like muscle cars. Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's not like my cup of tea. But the newer stuff that's limited edition, that definitely does something for me. I know I have a bunch of stuff in my
Yeah.
office that's the same way, the limited edition type
Well,
stuff.
and it's neat too. I mean, if you have the means to acquire something like that, it's just something different, right? And maybe you never shoot it. And listen, I don't advocate for safe queens. These guns are not safe queens. They're meant to be run hard and put away wet. But in certain circumstances like that, it's cool to just have something that nobody else has.
Yeah.
And so it's neat that we have a lot of guys. There aren't too many Alien owners out there who only own one Alien. Most of the guys will, they'll get into, the Alien platform. In most cases, they'll buy one to start, competition shooting, or they want a really cool range gun that's just gonna be something different. But then they start to go down that rabbit hole of, oh, maybe I'm gonna get a second one that'll be a collector's edition, or I've got a creator that I'm shooting in competitions, but man, the Remus is out now. I want to be able to carry the same gun that I'm putting 10,000 rounds a month through in competition.
Right.
So yeah, we have a lot of repeat customers, which is fun, right? We're a smaller niche brand. We know most of our customers on a first name basis.
Yeah.
So it's just neat to have that community and that family of customers and owners out there.
Yeah. So what's that? Maybe tell the difference between. There's the 3 models.
Yeah.
So the main model is
just the Alien. Yep.
The Alien.
Yep.
And primarily used for.
Mostly competition shooting.
Competition
so the Alien, it's kind of a hierarchical evolution. It makes the most sense to explain it that way. So the Laugo Arms Alien was the original pistol that started it all. So that came out back in, I believe it was 2017. It launched in Europe, came into the US in the winter of like 2019, 2020.
Okay.
That gun has been out for a number of years now, but it's not getting discontinued or deprecated. The factory still supports it. We still import them. We still sell them. Still a very popular model. The Alien Creator evolution was exactly what it sounds like. It was the evolution to the Alien. It was kind of the next step of, okay, we've got the Alien. It's been working great for us, but we've been making it for a few years now. What can we do to improve on this platform? Under the hood, it's the exact same gun. There's a lot of interchangeable components between the Creator and the original Alien. The biggest difference was they really developed the Creator for the US market. So the original Alien had more of a swept back European, think like Glock grip angle on it. So a lot of US shooters who have spent their whole shooting careers drawing and presenting and shooting, whether it was 1911s or 320s or whatever it might be.
Right.
It's a slightly more upright grip angle.
Okay.
And so the Creator, they took, from the waist up is basically the same pistol as the original Alien. From the waist down, it's a little bit different. They stood the grip angle up a little bit. So for a lot of US shooters who've been asking for that for a while, the Creator is going to point a little bit more naturally, more natural point of aim, which especially coming from the world of precision rifle shooting, having a natural point of aim is critical, especially if you're a competition shooter. You don't want to be hunting for that dot or drawing and having to drive the nose down every time. So that was the big difference going from the Alien to the Creator was, they kind of tweaked a few things under the hood and improved a few things. But it was really the grip angle and the grip design. So on the original Alien, you had, and I don't have original Alien out here, but we got a few we can take a look at later. The original Alien had more like a 1911 grip design where you have the side mounted grip panels with the 2 grip screws, had an interchangeable mag well, but there wasn't nearly as much versatility or ecosystem that you could do with the original Alien. With the Creator, they designed it to be really, really versatile. So with one screw on the back of the mag well, you take the mag well off and the grip panels on the back strap come off. And so there's different sizes, textures, materials, colors, all different kinds of stuff. So you can really, the Creator, they call it the Creator for that reason. You can create with it.
Kind of customize it to you.
Customize it
what
to
you like.
Right? Yeah. So you buy the gun, it's going to come with essentially the medium of everything on it. Medium backstrap, medium grips, medium mag well. And then if you want to, beef up the grips or beef up the backstrap, or you want the XL magwell from the LO model, you can do that to really build the gun into your grip style, your shooting application, your discipline. And so that's really the grip angle and the grip design are the big difference on the Creator. The Creator we launched at SHOT Show 2024. So that's been out for a couple of years now. It's been super popular. But the factory had always known, and we obviously were always getting requests of like, when are you guys going to do a carry gun? When are you going to do a gun that I can put in my waistband, that I can carry, that I can conceal, that's going to not only give me the performance of the Alien in a more compact platform, but especially for guys who I think I mentioned this before, are sending tens of thousands of rounds a month downrange through an Alien. There's a level of muscle memory, proficiency, trigger feel. It's your natural point of aim, and even just knowing what that gun feels like in your hand and when it fires, that if you're going to spend that much time, becoming really, really proficient on a platform, you don't want to have to switch to something completely different when your life depends on it. And so that was kind of the impetus for what became the Alien Remus. And the Remus is the compact carry version. So what's nice about it is, that's a creator and a Remus that are sitting on the table there. They're exactly the same from the waist down. So the Remus shares the grip module from the creator. So all of the creator grip panels, magwells, everything are cross-compatible between the creator and the Remus. So you can set the Remus up to have the exact same hand feel as your competition gun.
Okay.
The difference is in the upper, it's an inch shorter on the barrel. And there's a couple of really cool features on the Remus that just make it a lot more conducive to self-defense and concealed carry. One of the really unique features of the original Alien was that the optic doesn't reciprocate. So that top rail is fixed, and only the sides of the slide reciprocate when the gun is firing. So you have less reciprocating mass, and you have a stationary optic. So on most traditional pistol designs, your optic is reciprocating and coming back and forth every time you fire it, which means even if you got a really good grip, you're still reacquiring that dot when you come back on target for your follow-up shot.
Yep.
And so
return to zero is probably tremendous.
There's no return to zero because there's no loss of zero.
Right, there's no loss of zero.
Exactly. So it's akin to shooting a dot on a rifle. If you're used to shooting a red dot on a carbine or a PCC where it just doesn't move and you basically hold your dot on the target.
Right.
Now you have a pistol that allows for that. It's great. The downside of that is that if you're in a defensive application, you can't rack off the optic very quickly. You can't rack off of a boot or a kind of barrier or anything like that. Which again, not the end of the world, but if you're going to be carrying a pistol for self-defense, you want to be able to clear malfunctions, have it be a little bit more dexterity based, gross motor movement, and so. They developed what was called the retro Alien because for USPSA and IPSC, they started throwing a fit because this fixed optic, they said, oh, well, that's going to have to put you into open. And so Laugo said, all right, fine, we'll play your game. Well, they developed one, and you can kind of see it on the LO creator there, where the optic is now mounted to the reciprocating part of the slide. Okay. Which is great. Makes it legal for limited optics or production optics in IPSC. The only downside of that is that now you've lost that stationary optic, right? Yeah. Now, what's cool, the Alien tracks so flat to begin with that even the reciprocating optic versions, you're really never losing your sight picture there. But you do lose a stationary optic. Okay. So what they did on the Remus is they came out with what was called the PTR, push to rack system. And so if you look at the Remus up close, there's a little latch on the top of the slide that sits right in front of the optic. And so they basically turned the optic mount into a non-reciprocating charging handle. So it works similar to like an AR charging handle, where if you come over the top of that pistol, either with your hand or off of a barrier, you engage that latch, it releases the optic mount, the optic engages the slide, racks to the rear, comes back forward and locks in place again. So when the gun is cycling, your optic is not moving. You have that fixed optic, but now you have the benefit of being able to rack off the optic as well. So just, again, really cool kind of technological advances that they put into this, really taking, again, the U.S. market into consideration here, because let's face it, carry guns, the U.S. market has a monopoly on that. Right. There are other countries where you can carry firearms, but it's a much different process, and there's nowhere near the population of people who are carrying concealed. And so that was really, again, a kind of a nod to them listening to the feedback from the U.S. shooter community, saying, hey, we not only want a self-defense carry gun, but we want it to check all of the boxes. Right. And so that's what they did with the Remus, and it's been wildly popular.
And that came out, just last year?
We launched it at SHOT Show last year. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're the president of Laugo Arms USA.
That's one word.
You
for it.
are co-founder still of 9x19.
9x19.
You still are with OA Defense.
I've stepped back from OA Defense. Okay. So I'm full time with Laugo Arms now. Focusing my role on kind of growing that side of the business now, and they've got a great team in place over at OA Defense, so they're running with that. Yeah.
And then your new dad.
Yeah. Yep. I've got a 6.5-month-old at home. It's been a wildly rewarding adventure. Yeah. Yeah.
So spare time comes probably.
What was that phrase you just used?
Spare time. Like
I've never heard of it.
When you actually get to sit down and then relax. That's a lot of duties. What do you think? So we've talked about this, because I experienced the same thing. It's always so funny when we get involved with guns because we love guns, and then we don't get to go shoot competitions anymore.
Yeah. Right. I still go to a lot of competitions, but most of the time I'm standing behind the demo table and I'm watching other people go have fun, do the thing that I love most. And yeah, I mean, I think in 2022, 2023, I was shooting 20 to 30 matches a year. I think I shot 5 last year. Yeah. And again, listen, it's a trade-off, right? I'm not doing that permanently. It's a temporary sacrifice that you make to grow the business, to be out there, to put the product in front of people. And again, the flip side of it is that, as we talked about before, so much of the shooting sports community and shooting industry it's a social thing, right? And so,
Sure.
listen, even if I'm not shooting, if I'm still out of the match, surrounded by the guys who I used to shoot with all the time, or still shoot with when I can, seeing new people get into the sport, putting new shooters onto our guns, for me, that's every bit as rewarding as shooting the match myself. And the best thing is I can't DQ and I can't wind up at the bottom of the leaderboard. I don't have to worry about being a mid packer. So it's, for me, I've always enjoyed the instructing and coaching side,
Sure.
whether it's being a driving coach on the track, or a snowboard instructor, or a firearms instructor. I enjoy that aspect of it. So for me, going to these demo events and introducing new people to the sport is still rewarding. Do I want to be able to get back into shooting as much as I used to be? Absolutely. And hopefully we'll get to a point where the business becomes a little more self-sufficient. We can do that. And I'm looking forward to that day. But for now, it's really it's priority management,
Sure.
As much as it is time management. But honestly, it's not even me. I can't take credit for it. It's having not only a phenomenal support system at home, having a wife who is understanding and incredibly patient and supportive, but also just having a great team of guys, on the team at work. Having a team that you can rely on, where that things are going to get done right. If I have to go to a demo event, nothing's going to catch on fire at the office. They're going to crush it. If they're at a demo event and I have to be at the office, I know they're going to crush it there.
Yeah.
So being able to have a team that you can rely on is critical. Whether you're a business owner or a manager or whatever it may be, being able to have that as a resource is what allows you to do a lot of different things and to spread your time across different priorities, which I think is to me the most critical piece of all of it.
Yeah. I don't think, well, I was just watching something on the news about that, I guess, business entrepreneurship is up currently. And they were saying something to the effect that it's people don't, with everything you see on Instagram and all the social media stuff, how easy they might make it look.
There's nothing glamorous about it.
Right. So you and I both know the difficulties of running. This is my third, actually, a business that I've started. And yeah. No, and they don't all succeed. So
most of them fail. Listen, I am no exception to that rule. I had a business for 9 years. I did a media production and marketing company, and I won't say that failed as much as I just got so burned out on it that I decided to step back from that and get back into working full time for the companies, and then ultimately found myself right back full circle again, starting new businesses. But there were plenty of businesses that I started that have not made the cut or have not made it across the finish line. And you learn so much more from those experiences and from those businesses than you do from the ones that succeed. There's so many more, pitfalls and things that you learn to avoid than you do learn to do right.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not sure, listen, I'm sure there's exceptions to it, but I'm not sure that the vast majority of business owners won't say the same thing, is that you have to fail before you succeed. There's so many lessons in those failures that they are a necessary and critical part to ultimately finding that recipe for success.
If you're going to find the recipe for success, you have to know where the failures and how to adapt and change and move on and break through.
That's exactly right. Adaptive problem solving. That's really all business is. Yeah.
Yep. 100%. That was my previous company was a lot of years spent in the trenches, learning some really, really hard lessons.
Pointing a lot of fire extinguishers at a lot of fires all at once.
I was very fortunate to be able to walk away from that on the upside. So I'm very fortunate, and then was able to now spend my time here. So and now I get to do something that I love that. When I did it, it started when it got to the point of 27 years or whatever. That's when it started to been doing the same thing for a long time. Was really just looking for something new. So that's when it was time for me to kind of move on.
Put the passion back in the profession. Yeah.
Yeah. Into something I really had passion. And I love building, even though it is incredibly difficult to build a business.
Yeah.
It gives you, there is just the satisfaction of having built something that wasn't there before.
Well, and the building is the fun part, right? That's when you're still in the unknown, when you can come up with creative solutions to things. You're not locked into processes. Every day is a new adventure. So there's rarely a boring day when you're building a business. Sometimes when you make it to a point where the business is just on cruise control, that's when you have to step back and go, I'm doing something wrong, right? Because now I've got to start pushing again and figuring out what's next. We're moving into a new product line, new processes, and expanding into new markets, because you don't want to stagnate or become stale. So, and that's what's fun about it, is you get to go back into the building phase again.
Yeah.
And that excitement level ramps up again.
Yeah, because that's really what had happened to me at my previous company. It was just kind of lost that passion, really was kind of just burned out. And now, I like coming into work again. It was for a while, it just had gotten to a point that it was just the same thing. And I really kind of lost that passion, and really am now much more motivated and driven and enjoy coming into work.
Which is awesome. I mean, and that is such an important aspect of it too. And just in general, I mean, if you hate your job, whether you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, or just working a 9 to 5, I mean, life's too short. You have to be able to find at least some enjoyment in what you're spending the majority of your life doing. Because let's face it, I mean, in today's market, you are spending most of your waking hours at work.
Yep.
And especially if you're in any kind of an entrepreneurial or business ownership position, there is no going home from it. You go home, you try to put your phone down for a little bit, but there's still stuff going on. I mean, you have to love it.
Yep.
If you don't love it, you're going to hate it real fast.
Yep. 100%. What challenges do you see for the brand that coming up in the future? We talked a little bit about this before.
Yeah.
There's competition that's out there. We saw some new stuff at SHOT Show.
Yeah.
And then how do you feel that you're going to stay ahead of the curve? Yeah.
Well, we're really fortunate in that, obviously we're partnered with the factory in the Czech Republic, and say what you want about, the European gun culture. The Czechs know how to make guns. I mean, their engineering, their ingenuity, their creativity is just on a completely different level. I mean, there's not a month that goes by that they don't surprise me with something new. And I'm like, how did you guys come up with that? And that's coming from a guy who, I spend my life, literally every day eating, sleeping, and breathing firearms in the firearm industry, and, new platforms and new technology and everything. And they still never cease to surprise me with new stuff they're coming out with. And so, from a challenge perspective, the Alien and Laugo Arms in general, there's no way to sugarcoat it. It's a very expensive product. It's a niche product line. We've got a pretty core, customer demographic that you can really kind of split down the middle. You have your high end collectors, and then you've got your competition shooters. Guys who are buying it for the mechanical advantage, for the performance, and then you've got the guys who are buying it just because it's something different. And I think as long as we continue to push the envelope and continue to push that innovation, those customer bases are always going to exist. And even the guys who own one already, as we continue to come out with new models, again, most of our customers are repeat customers. And so, it's been interesting. You mentioned seeing some new stuff come out this year. For the last few years, there hasn't been much that's come out to try to compete with the Alien in terms of the low bore axis, the operating system, the fixed top rail. There's a lot of things that have just remained really proprietary and unique about it until this year. And so it's been really it's been fun seeing other manufacturers, put a little bit more effort behind the engineering, behind the ingenuity, seeing new manufacturers pop up and pushing the envelope of what's possible. Because, let's face it, you're not typically, and this is not true across the board, but you don't typically see the big guys coming out with like the next thing that's going to revolutionize the industry. It's usually somebody small who comes out of a garage shop and figures something out because they had the balls to try something totally different. They're not beholden to shareholders and profit, and they say, I'm going to put my creativity and everything I am behind this. And so, there's a lot of really cool stuff that came out at SHOT Show this year that is really cool, because now it's going to force us to push the innovation again. There's no more resting on our laurels of, we're different because we're different.
Right.
There's stuff that's now kind of coming up and nipping at our heels, and it's cool because now it's pushing us again to say, okay, what's going to be the next iteration, the next evolution? How do we do again, capture lightning in a bottle a second time with the next generation of pistol design, handgun design, and firearm design in general. So there's a lot of cool stuff the factory's working on that I'm really excited to see hit the market in the next couple of years here.
That's cool. How much input do you get to make into some of those? Like, do you get to give some input? How receptive do they become to?
It's been,
this is the American market. It's maybe a little different, like you were saying about the carry.
They're outstanding with that. We're fortunate enough to, we try to get over there once every year or twice a year to get over to the factory, spend some time with them, and kind of talk about, what's new in the market, where are there gaps in the market, what are the trends that are popping up? Because let's face it, the firearms industry is so trend driven. It's not just about what's the newest, latest, hottest thing. It's foregrips on rifles. Well, now nobody wants foregrips on rifles. It's let's put risers on our optics. Now nobody wants risers on their optics. So there's a lot of these kind of ebb and flow trends, and so kind of keeping your finger on the pulse of that is A, fun to do, but B, having a partner in the factory that is so receptive to that. I mean, let's face it, the Creator and the Remus wouldn't exist if they weren't really listening to the U.S. firearms community. And that doesn't mean that's the only thing they're listening to. They take the whole global market into account, because there's stuff that the European shooting scene is asking for. There's stuff the U.S. shooting scene is asking for. Even in Central and South America, you're starting to see action shooting becoming a lot more prevalent. And Laugo's getting a really good foothold down in those markets as well too. And so, being able to kind of play that game and pull from all these different things and say, yeah, we want to do this, we want to address that. And then how do you get all of that into one platform is really cool. And I think they do a really good job of taking that into account and bringing to market either what the market is asking for or what the market doesn't even know to ask for yet, but then becomes really well adopted. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was just down in Aruba, I was telling you that we went to that gun range that was there, and they're hosting the Pan Am, and they're expecting, so the Pan Am IPSC competition, and they're expecting 600 shooters over, I forget how many days, I think it's like 3 days or whatever, but 600 shooters. They're planning on going through somewhere near 300 to 500,000 rounds of ammunition.
That's a hell of a match. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's and they're already, I mean, it's not till August, and they're already well into
prepping for it
right now.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, I think we haven't fully committed yet, but I'm hoping we'll be down there not only as a sponsor, but with some of our pro team guys down there running that match. So that should be a good time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's a cool. It was, again, it's funny because you go on this island, and if you're on the one side of the island, it's all resorts and beaches and everything else, and you go to this other side of the island, and it's the desert, and there's a shooting range when you get there,
and a very active shooting community down there, which again, like you kind of just make these snap judgments. Oh, it's a little island community. There's not going to be an action sports or action shooting sports community down there, but there is, and it's a very active one. I mean, even just jumping back to the U.S. I mean, California is a really interesting one. I mean, especially in like Northern California, like Richmond Action. There's a lot of ranges out there that host, I would say, arguably some of the best matches in the country. But they're out there in a state that is overlooked by a lot of the firearms industry, and it's a shame that they've got to work around some of the regulations and everything. But I mean, the action shooting as a sport is a lot more active globally than I think a lot of people give it credit for, especially on the pistol side. Some of the countries where pistol shooting is huge, they don't have the rifle shooting because they don't have the hardware for it. They don't have the laws that allow for it. But yeah, it's interesting when you get to be exposed to some of that stuff. I mean, I was fortunate to go over to Finland with OA Defense a couple of years ago, and Finland has a huge gun culture over there and a big competition shooting and hunting culture, and it's just neat to see it embraced. Everybody thinks, oh well, firearms is the U.S. like that's, and they just own that, but it really is a global sport, and it's a sport that, again, harkening back to community, it ties everybody together. You might not speak the same language, but if you're shooting in a squad with somebody, that's a shared language. It's a shared enthusiasm and passion around something that you enjoy. It's just a cool way to bring people together from all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, you think about some of the oldest firearms brands, Benelli, Beretta, right? All European manufacturers.
It's exactly
and those
right.
factories are just, if you watch some of the tours and so forth,
incredible.
Incredible factories that these guys have.
Well, it's what's really cool about Laugo, and I've not had the opportunity to get over to Beretta or Benelli, and I'm sure there's aspects of those manufacturers that are similar. But what's really cool about Laugo specifically is their factory is this perfect amalgam of cutting edge, state of the art CNC technology with what I can only compare to a Swiss watch shop. There's such a blend of automated machining and technology with old world European craftsmanship. They've got 50 or 60 employees over there at the factory, and every individual employee has one task they specialize in. And if that person's not there that week, that part doesn't get made because they're the only person in the world that knows how to put that perfect surface finish on that sear or on the hammer, or how to tune the trigger. And so, while they have, a half a dozen armorers that are doing the assembly, it's really cool to see that level of craftsmanship and human element going into these things, where I think that gets lost on a lot of just mass produced firearms these days. You don't have that same level of care and attention to detail and craftsmanship in it.
Yeah, that's definitely something that you find in the smaller, when they're
Exactly.
you're trying to differentiate. So that is the way, because they just can't do it, right? They can't spend that amount of time doing that. Like watch manufacturers, perfect example, right?
Yeah.
Like Patek and AP and so forth produce very, very small quantities.
It's a totally different level of manufacturing precision. Yeah.
And there's guys making a small little part, and they're the only ones that make that part.
And there's, I mean, especially with watchmaking, there's certain processes that can't be done by a machine, because even machines can't be as precise as that individual can be, who just they've spent the last 10, 15, 20 years perfecting that craft, and that art is really what it is. And so it's cool to see that, translating into the firearm space as well.
What do you so since you're importing, tariffs obviously are a big news topic of the day. It's been across the board. How has that impacted or been of a challenge for you guys?
It's a volatile situation that is changing day by day. So it's something that we're constantly monitoring. Last summer, obviously the tariffs for us from the EU is what we're focusing on. We were paying a 3% duty bringing the pistols in up until last summer, and then that jumped to 15%. And so obviously when you have a product that's this expensive, a jump from 3 to 15% is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars in tariffs that all of a sudden are just, your product becomes instantly a lot more expensive. Your cost of goods sold goes through the roof. And so, we did a lot of things to just kind of be strategic about, how can we absorb as much of that as we can on our end, especially temporarily, knowing that there may be shifts, hopefully down, possibly up. But, we did as much as we could to insulate our customer base from that. We did raise our prices a little bit moving into 2026 when we found out those tariffs are not going away anytime soon. But the tariffs went up, arguably 12% from 3 to 15. But we only brought our prices up about 5 to 6% for 2026. Because we were able to find some places where we could lean out a little bit and find some efficiencies elsewhere, and with shipping and everything else. But it's something we have to constantly monitor. And, now, as of about a week or two ago, now they're talking about, are they potentially be rolling back these tariffs? And if they do, is that going to be permanent? What, exporting nations are going to be affected by that, and by how much? And, so it's just something we have to monitor. And it is, it's an additional dynamic that we have to stay on top of, as opposed to just, yeah, great, we buy our product from someone down the street. Which, don't get me wrong, I mean, I am as much of an advocate for American manufacturing as anybody, but there's certain products that you can't manufacture here. So yeah, it is. It's another challenge that we just have to be on top of constantly, and do our best to, insulate our customers from the ebbs and flows of that. Because especially when you have a dealer network with 200 plus dealers nationwide, you can't be changing your prices every month. You can't adjust them up and down, because now all of a sudden you've got guys who paid one thing and now you're charging something different. And so we have to be the ones to kind of, create that consistency in the marketplace, and maintain that stability. Even when on the back end, it's a lot of instability. So, yeah.
So, last topic we'll go into is somewhat along the same lines, is that, what do you see the industry 2020, 2026, political, economic? How do you see things, fostering this year? It was last year. I know we talked to a lot of people that last year there were a couple of months last year which were really lean and real tough.
Yeah.
How do you see kind of going forward from this point?
It was interesting. I mean, to look to the future, you have to look to the past a little bit. And I don't mean far in the past, but the last few years. I mean, the firearms industry exploded during COVID. There were a lot of people sitting home without much else to do. And so there was a lot of, disposable income's not the right word for it, but there was a lot of spending that moved and found its way into the firearms industry. When there's civil unrest, there's a lot of people who become new gun owners who maybe were never in the firearm space before. The flip side of that was that after that COVID boom, you also had a lot of these new firearms owners who said, okay, I'm now feeling a little bit more secure. I don't need this gun in my home anymore. So there was this huge backflush into the market of all of these used firearms, pre-owned firearms. And so, And at the same time, you then had a Republican getting into office, and you had the Trump slump, as everybody referred to it. So it's kind of this double whammy. And so there's been a couple of years that have been a lot slower in the firearms industry, especially for the mid-tier stuff. We're fortunate in that we're a little bit insulated from that because we are a luxury item. Our portion of the market isn't quite as heavily affected by those ebbs and flows, but we still deal with the same, seasonal or seasonality in that roller coaster of, everything's slow in the summer and picks up in the fall and then in the spring again. But, I think we've seen that. I'm hopeful that a lot of that instability of the last, 3 to 5 years is starting to settle out now.
Right.
We're starting to see, background check numbers going up again. You're starting to see firearm sales going up again, back to kind of the pre-COVID numbers, which I think for the industry is a safe place to be. Politically speaking, it's always interesting because from a regulatory standpoint, you always want to have, a conservative, government, whether it's the Senate and the House or whether it's the presidency. But let's face it, from an industry perspective, when you have a Democrat in office, you see the sales spike back up again because of the panic buying.
Yeah.
And it's an unspoken thing, and it doesn't mean that we want to see Democrats get into office because of what they'll do from the regulatory side. But watching the elections, watching what bills are coming through, and what new regulations are coming down the pipe is something you just have to constantly monitor.
Right.
And you see that. You see that kind of across the board with, the AR market going up and down. Now you're starting to see a little bit of a resurgence in that. The nice thing with pistols, especially high-end pistols, for us, this whole shift towards the 2011, market has been great because, 3, 4, 5 years ago, if you told somebody that you sold a $5,000 pistol, their jaw would hit the floor and they would be like, well, that's insane. But now a $5,000 pistol is becoming far more commonplace.
Sure.
And so, yes, you are reliant on the economy coming back a little bit, people having more disposable income, being willing to invest in products of this nature. But the nice thing is now we're really positioned that, you now don't have to spend far more than what else is on the market to get this level of performance. Now you're able to get all of this performance really right in the middle of what's pretty average for a high-end competition pistol. If you're not in the competition space, it's going to, there's going to be a little bit of sticker shock, but a lot of competition shooters, they're spending 8, 9, 10, 12 grand on their competition pistols, especially these custom 2011 builds.
Yep.
So, being in that, $5,000 to $6,000 price point, it's not nearly the sticker shock that it used to be. And so we're seeing a lot more widespread adoption as, people are realizing, man, I can get into this level of performance. It's like being able to buy a Ferrari for BMW pricing, or Porsche pricing. And so it's been an interesting kind of shift for us, and we've been able to kind of ride that wave a little bit. And, I don't think that market's going anywhere. I think that price tier has, become a much more normalized thing now. And listen, anything can happen, but for us, I think that's a really beneficial aspect of kind of where the industry is going and where I think it's going to continue to go for the next couple of years here.
As long as the experience stays there, the quality, right? I find that people are typically willing to pay for when they get more.
Yeah,
it's kind of the whole story of Vegas right now that's going through.
Yeah.
It's like, look, they're overcharging for nachos, and it's like, look, it's nachos.
It's the same tortilla chips and cheese, right?
Yeah,
I don't want to spend $35 for them. Yeah.
So as long as if they were smart and they kept up with that level of service that everybody, like, it was amazing and everything is just top notch and it's a whole nother level.
Yeah.
People are willing to spend when they see that perceived value of what it is. If you stop delivering that perceived value, then you're going to see sales tend to slide off.
You're 100% correct.
Whereas if you have something that continue and again stay relevant, stay new, and whatever, and continue to innovate, people will spend the money as long as they see that there's that value in it.
You're absolutely right. And trust is a big piece of it, and when this was a brand new brand, pardon the double wording there, but when this was brand new on the market, we did have to fight for that a little bit to convince people that, listen, you invest in this, it's not going to disappear in a year. You're not going to have a hard time buying parts for it. The warranty service, all of these guns carry on paper, it's a 30,000 round 2-year warranty, but we never leave our customers out in the cold. I'm not sure that we've rejected a warranty claim. If it's something that we can fix for you and you're a good customer, and you're part of the Laugo family, we are here to take care of you. And we cover the entire U.S. market with all of the warranty service or just general service work, whatever you need. And so to your point, it really is about that experience. And we put a lot of time and energy and effort into making this a premium experience. We don't want it to be, for lack of a better example, we don't want it to be Ferrari where it feels almost standoffish to be a part of that. We want this to be something that, yeah, if you're a competition shooter and you've got the means and you want to invest in that next level of performance, don't be afraid to come and join the Laugo family, because we will have your back. If you have questions about, well, okay, this is a very different platform, what do I need to know? Give us a call. I mean, all of us on the team are avid competition shooters. We shoot these guns in competition. I carry one every single day. So there's a lot of experience behind them. There's the support behind it. There's the warranty service that's there. And it's an ecosystem too. We talked about a little bit before, but you invest in the pistol, but you also now have this whole, ecosystem open to you where you can set up one gun to shoot in lots of different divisions, lots of different sanctioning bodies. And so, it's just a fun platform to get into. And again, to your point, as long as you can continue backing that and providing that premium experience,
right?
People, might, even if they're a little hesitant in the beginning, I don't think we ever have anyone who has buyer's remorse.
Yeah. So we do want to make sure that follow you guys on Facebook, Instagram. You guys have a YouTube channel as well?
We do. Yeah, we don't upload a ton of stuff to it. We use Vimeo primarily for a lot of our stuff because we embed that on our website. But Instagram is a great one for us. Just Laugo Arms on Instagram. We also have Laugo Arms USA, which is our secondary account for the US specific business.
Great, I appreciate it. Well, make sure if you have any questions, drop them in the comment section below. Be happy to answer anything. Dave, I'm sure, will be able to jump on in and answer any questions that you might have about Laugo Arms, about the Alien pistol, competition, so forth. If you want to know, just his family life in general, I'm sure he'll be happy to.
Yeah, I'll give you my cell phone, my home address, social security number, whatever.
All that. And if you don't already, please make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button. Make sure you click that little bell as well. You get notified of all the latest content. Really appreciate it. You guys continue to support, the channel. We've seen some real great growth recently. I really appreciate everybody that's been tuning in and all the support and all the feedback that we hear is just constantly, that this is really fun and they like to hear it and get to learn so much new about different companies and shooting and just the entire industry in general. So I really do appreciate all you guys. Also, make sure you check out these 2 videos. And continue to watch everything on the channel. Really appreciate everything, you guys. Have a great day.